Hey guys, welcome back to ZachBlog. As you know, recently we've picked up the M3D Micro 3D printer. Today we're actually going to do a review of this unit. So, let's go. Okay, so here we have the unit. The M3D Micro 3D printer. Of course, it's pretty small. About the size of my hand, actually. Let's get the measurements of the actual unit. It's going to be roughly 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches ish by 7.5 inches ish. That is, of course, 190 millimeters ish. The size of the actual machine doesn't really matter, though. The size of the build platform is what matters. Now, the M3D doesn't like to actually print all the way to the sides of the build platform. So even though we have 125 millimeter, or almost 5-inch build platform, it's squared, 125 mil, we only get to use about 100 by 100. So it's actually leaving a good, significant portion of the build platform unused. I've recently torn off one of my build platforms, and you can actually see all around the outside there's an unused portion. It's really disappointing, actually. And also, the vertical build platform isn't a cube, so you would think it's square that way and square that way, but it is not. You've basically got, I don't remember the measurements, but you've got a cube that uses the full 100 by 100 millimeter, and then you've got a smaller cube on top. So once you get above, according to their website, 74 millimeters. Once you're above 74 millimeters, at that point it confines it to a smaller area, which is 91 by 84 millimeters. It's not too much smaller, but it's smaller, and it's something to think about when you're importing your models. Another thing I'd like to mention, it probably doesn't matter at this stage, they've been shipping for a while now. There's a sticker on the bottom of your printer. It says the Micro 3D printer has its FCC certifications and all that stuff. Mine happens to say Kickstarter Edition by M3D. I did not back these guys on Kickstarter. I ordered through their website a consumer model, as they claimed they were ready to start shipping consumer models. This doesn't particularly affect me or my usage of the machine, and given that I've had this machine a couple months now, they've probably run out of Kickstarter models, so you're probably not at risk of receiving a Kickstarter model. But it's just something I should mention, just as a thorough review. So that's pretty much all there really is to look at for the machine. There's replacement parts you can order, such as a replacement nozzle. You can order replacement build tacks. You can order, what was it, a fan, the power cord. That's pretty much it. You can order a few parts, The problem I see is you can't order your heater. They're using a ceramic heater, and according to people on the forums who have done some digging, it appears they're using a ceramic heater, and instead of using a thermistor at all, they're using the resistance change of the ceramic heater, and basically each printer is having to be calibrated to its own heater. So at this point they're not sending out replacement heaters for people. So be very careful with your heater if you replace your nozzle or have any other reason to get into the hot end of your machine. I've just taken the front off because my extruder gear, it doesn't like to push the filament back out, so once in a while I have to take this little piece off and actually pull my filament out. That's not a big issue. It feeds it in perfectly. It's never not fed the filament in, so it doesn't really bother me much. Just something to know. So let's put the machine aside. Let's take a look at what it can produce. The first thing we should look at is some examples I was printing the other day just to see if the new software was any good. They've recently released a new version of their software, version 1.3.6.5. It's labeled Hotfix on the forums. Not sure what it was supposed to fix, but as you'll see in a minute, it didn't fix anything for me. Let's move this camera down a bit. Let's move that out of the way, you don't need to see that yet. So, first we printed one of these. Printed alright, maybe got a little hole in it. That might have been from me screwing with the filament first, because on the next print that didn't happen. No big hole like that. Pretty good. This is scaled down in the Z-axis, so this base layer is very thin. But these two turned out great. This is hollow thick walls, and this is hollow thin walls. And this is on software version 1.3.5. I generally print on low quality setting. So if ever I'm showing you something and it's not marked, just assume it's on low. These were both on low. One was on thin walls, one was on thick walls. These walls are actually pretty close to spec. I'll probably do a video about that another time. That's not what this is about right now. But just accuracy-wise, these are very close to spec. But then, I upgraded the printer. Upgraded. This is version 1.6, or 1.3.6.5. Their newest version. The whole bottom layer is like separated. These were no longer in spec at all. And that's hollow thin walls. And then when I went to print it out again, yeah, it didn't even attach the outside wall to the rest of the model. And this one was thick walls. And again, nowhere near in spec. I could just peel these off. So it really didn't do this model well at all. Let's move on to something better. So I printed out a Lego. And rafts generally don't work with this machine as far as I've been able to tell. But I came up with a process of my own. I let the machine put down the first layer of the raft, sometimes the second layer of the raft. Then I turn a fan on high, pointed right at the machine, and blow cold air across the print until it's about 3 layers into the actual model. This was also with a model that barely has any contact with the raft. I haven't printed anything that has full contact with the raft with the fan experiment yet, but for the first try it worked out great. And I gotta give this machine points for accuracy again. This is a 16mm by 16mm Lego piece. And it measures exactly 16mm by 16mm. Okay, maybe not exactly, but closer than I would have ever expected. It's less than 0.1 off in both axes. Now, speaking of great prints, this turned out great. This skull was printed in 4 pieces, glued together. Jaw was printed in 2 pieces. You can see the glue line there. I haven't really refined any of it yet. And then you can see the skull, the glue line right there. But this turned out great. This was on low quality. You can kind of see a lot of the lines in here, but not bad at all. This is actually in the model. I'm not sure why there's like cracks in the skull in the model. It turned out great. All the teeth are there. Teeth aren't falling out. Then there's the mandible. I had one tooth that wasn't quite connected, and I just kind of used a lighter to stick it back in there. Other than that, this turned out great. So that's all well and good, but we need to compare this to something. So this was printed a long time ago. I'll post the video right here. Okay, everyone back? So these were printed long ago for the Arduino robot. And these turned out great. This is the first thing I ever 3D printed. The first thing I ever really 3D modeled. This is not a downloaded design. I designed them. Printed them out. This groove was so that it fit properly on the motor mounts. Somebody just went live on Adafruit, or on Periscope, probably Adafruit. Oh no, that's Barnacles. We'll be back. Alright guys, we're back. So if you're not subscribed to Barnacles Nerdgasm, you guys should go check out his channel and subscribe right now. I'll put an annotation right over here. If you searched 3D printing and found my channel, YouTube really should have given you his channel first. He does some amazing things with his 3D printers. This year he actually 3D printed a full-size Stormtrooper's costume. So anyway, what we're going to do now is just compare the brackets that were printed on the Affinia, a commercially available machine through Staples, and see what it compares, or see how the M3D compares. So here we printed out the same brackets. They came out a little smaller. I used the same STL that I loaded into the Affinia, but the scaling was way off. These have been scaled up by 750 and they're still smaller. But they did turn out pretty good. Nice flat sides, nice flat bottom. They were printed without a raft. All the same details. In the model, this was the very first thing I ever 3D modeled. And somehow I ended up with a little divot there. You can see the square. Even scaled down, it included that small detail. Focus. Both turned out well. They're printed at the same time. And I have a time lapse for you. So we'll roll that and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at some of the pros and cons of this machine. Alright guys, so now it's time to take a quick look at the pros and cons. We'll take a look at the pros first, and what I've done here is I've separated my chart, the pros on the left, cons on the right, hardware along the top, and software along the bottom. So the first thing we'll take a look at is the hardware, and what's good about the hardware. The first thing we should mention is it's compact. It's a nice small machine, like it's smaller than my head. It'll fit anywhere. It looks nice. It's got great aesthetics. You can get it in a variety of colors. I think I've actually recently seen on Twitter a picture of a clear one. I'm not sure if they're actually releasing it as a clear option or if that was a custom one, but I have seen a clear one and it looked nice. Accuracy. Now, as we've seen, this thing can print some pretty accurate parts. The Lego block I printed was like pretty much perfect in size and shape. I don't really have any real Lego at the moment, so I couldn't test if it clips into a real Lego piece or if a real Lego piece will clip onto it. But if I were to print out more pieces, I'm sure they'll fit together, and I'll probably do a video about printing off some Lego compatible bricks eventually. I may try with the raw stock as well, just for like comparative purposes, see how my build's going to compare to this commercially available machine. So the accuracy I'd have to really give this thing points on. For plugging in and clicking print, it produces some accurate results. Now I've put here safe for young users, safer for young users. The print head on this, it's pretty hard to actually touch the nozzle itself. especially when it's printing. I'm not a really young kid with really tiny fingers. You might be a kid can probably get their fingers in there, but I can't quite fit my finger in to touch the nozzle. And it's got that nice rubber bushing around it. So, compared to my rep wrap where the whole nozzle is exposed, this is pretty safe for kids. So I'm going to toss that one in there. You're going to have to make your own judgment on that. Again, it's a 3D printer, it's not for little kids, but it's safe for younger users. So that's our hardware. Doesn't seem like there's that much that's that great about the hardware, but I kind of got into this machine knowing what I was getting into. So you'll want to do your research and figure out if this machine is what you need before you end up buying it. We're going to move on to software. Yeah, there's only 2 points, technically only one. Yeah. So, easy to use. Yeah, you plug it in, you click print, and it does its thing. But that only gets you so far. There's, like, sometimes you'll put a model into the software, and just due to the complexity of the model, I find the software doesn't do a great job at figuring out how to do the bottom layer. Just considering some of the hardware issues with this machine, it should have more Z-hop. I've tried to configure that. That's for another video. Basically, the software is easy to get started with. You're probably going to want something more in the end. There's more options coming available. There's Microprint, which is a third-party app to control this from a Mac system. And there's also a plugin called M3D for the Octoprint interface, which is actually usable on the Raspberry Pi. I haven't had any luck with it so far. I've crashed my head into my bed a few times trying to use it, so I only really use it when it's time to switch the print bed, or the build tack on my print bed. Then I load up M3D and I give it a shot. I've done that 3 times now, and I can't get it to work, so you may have better luck with that than I have. Again, I've only had a couple tries with it. Apparently they're going to try and release the M3D company is going to try and release their software on all platforms, on Windows, Linux, and Mac. I don't have a Mac machine, so I can't say for sure if it's available for Mac, but it sounds like it's not ready for Mac yet, and it's definitely not ready for Linux yet. So, easy to use for now, but it's going to leave you wanting more. Which brings us to our second point, very few settings. That's great for the first few days. If you've never used a 3D printer before, having very few settings to tinker with could help you out, but it's going to leave you wanting more. As you learn more about the machine, you're going to want more. And most notably, there's no pause button on this machine. You can't switch filaments, like, mid-print. You can't print 2 color items. You have to figure out how to time it, cut the filament, and feed the next piece in. But we'll get to that. That's all we have for pros for the software, in my opinion. This is a review, this is my opinion. You may have a different opinion, of course. So, unfortunately, that's all we've got for pros. Moving on to our cons. Hardware. The parts for this are not easy to find. It's hard to find parts for this, really. All you can get is a nozzle and the extruder fan. That's all you can really order from M3D, other than the build tack and an extra plug pack. And I guess, yeah, the perforated print bed itself, you can order an extra one of those. But the important hardware, motors, the heater, you can't replace that. So I have to put that under cons. Small build area. We've looked at that. I should add to that small and awkward build area. I mean, once you're beyond 74 millimeters, your build area shrinks in X and Y. So you have to account for that if you're trying to print something tall. Like, that's part of the reason I chose that particular skull model to print. I wasn't sure if I could print the whole thing on this print bed at one time. I mean, I don't like printing with rafts, so I probably would have cut it up even if I was sure. But if I wanted to try and print it in one shot, I didn't really have that option, because I wasn't sure it would fit in the upper area of the build platform. A big one for me is it's tethered. There's no micro SD, no SD, no memory card support on this. You plug it into the computer and you have to leave your computer running. On Windows, that's not always a good thing. I've had so many updates crash this printer. I've had to recalibrate so many times because Windows decided it's time to update. And it couldn't wait 3 hours for a print to finish. That sucks. It's slow. It really is slow. There's not much else to say to that. You can't speed it up. It's just slow. It prints slowly. Wobbly head. We already looked at this. The print head is so wobbly. And can't replace heater. We've gone over that. I really don't like the fact that you can't replace your heater. That's something I really wanted to order one to have on hand. If that heater dies, what can I do for a while, right? And of course, no heated bed. With the size of the machine, the price of the machine, it's not a big deal, but it would be a nice thing to have. Somebody is doing a Kickstarter. My information may be out of date. I haven't seen that thread in like a month. It may be done on Kickstarter by now. But somebody was looking into producing a heated bed to fit this specifically. So there's that option. I'm building my own raw stock, which is why I bought this printer. So I'm really not interested in putting a heated bed on this. Once my raw stock is complete, it'll have a heated bed, it'll do all my ABS prints. This will basically sit alongside and print out any small parts in PLA. So that's what's wrong with the hardware. Some of it's deal breakers, not all of it. As for software, all along they've been talking about open hardware, open source software. It's not open source though. They've used the Cura engine, they haven't modified it, so they don't have to release their source code. That's fine. But they've been promising all along that it's going to be open source. So I'm pretty disappointed that it's not. Also, it makes it more difficult for me. There's some menus hidden in their code that are just locked. I've been trying to unlock them, I've been running into some errors. It'd be nice if it was open source, then I could actually just ask them. New versions, not always better. The software coming out for this thing has been a nightmare. Luckily I found the version that works great with this machine and I've stuck with it. As you've seen with those models, changing software has not done me any favors. When 1.3.5 came out, this started working great, and nothing else has really worked with this machine. There was an older version that did okay, but calibration was way off. Yeah. 1.3.5 works great with this machine. There's been newer versions come out since that don't. Personally, I would think a newer software should work better. That's not the case with this machine. Very few settings. Now, we discussed this in the pros side of things. For the first little while, it's a good thing. If this is your first 3D printer, it can help you get used to the machine without having to tamper with a lot of different settings. Once you get used to the machine, it leaves you wanting more. They should have done a beginner mode and an advanced mode where to start out you could just click print and go. And then once you got used to the machine, options such as their custom slicer menu, which has been disabled in software, that could have been a really useful feature for me, which is why I'm trying to dig it out of the software. So hopefully you guys over at M3D see this, and maybe can we have our custom slicer tab, please? Until then, I'm gonna have to say the software is really lacking. It leaves me wanting a lot more. Driver bugs. There are so many bugs trying to get the drivers working for this on Windows 7. I don't know if this is everyone's experience. Now that this is unplugged from my computer, if I were to plug this back into my Windows 7 machine, I wouldn't be printing for a few hours. I've recently moved this over to the new machine, Windows 10. It seems to just work with it. I plug it in, it goes, found your new printer is ready, and away you go. So that's why there's the asterisk. That may be my system. That's probably not the same on every system. Probably not the same on every Windows 7 operating system. I had a lot of trouble with drivers on my older computer. And the biggest gripe I have with this machine, actually, surprisingly with all this, I just want a pause button. I want to be able to pause, remove my filament, put in a new color, and continue. At this point, I've tried a few things. I actually gave the one away. The only one that came out nice, I gave it away. But I've tried to... Oh! I got a key here that I did. I tried to just cut the filament right at the head of the extruder and feed the new one in behind it. It worked, but there's a lot of guesswork. I only got one layer of pink on that. I cut that like 2 layers into it. It's 8 layers. So it took like 6 layers to actually get there. So there's a lot of guesswork trying to feed it in like that. So I really just wish they would give us a pause button. I haven't really dug too deep into their code. I kind of just forgot about everything else when I found the custom slicer tab. But recently I've found a thread on the forum that says there is a default option for a pause button in the software somewhere. It's locked again. Please open source the software, guys. Anyway, yeah. I was really hoping this review would be more positive than this, because I love this machine. This is, for the money I spent on this printer, it has done exactly what I wanted it to do. My raw stock is pretty much built. I need a heated bed. I need to redo some of the end effector because I played around with it way too much. It's really cool. That's pretty much it. So I'm really happy with how this has performed for me. The raw stock's almost done, and that is the purpose I bought this for. So For me, this has been a great machine, but looking at it from an outside perspective, there is a lot more problems than there are good things about this machine. That being said, if you know what you're getting into, or if you're getting this machine for a younger audience, then it's a great machine. I can't say it's junk. It prints. It prints well. It just doesn't have all the features I would like, which is why I'm building my own. But for somebody who's not interested in building their own, who's not interested in spending $1,300, I could recommend this product, actually. Yeah, I could recommend it for a younger user or somebody who's done their research and isn't going to need a pause button, isn't going to need to print something big, or that can glue the pieces together. Like I do that a lot. A lot of things I print out in multiple pieces and I glue them together. If you know what you're getting into, thumbs up. If not, I wouldn't just buy this. Don't just buy it. Just because of the price tag is not the reason to buy this. You could get the PrinterBot Simple for a little more than this. It has a bigger print area and more options. But it's a PrinterBot. There might be too many options if you're getting this for a younger user. I would personally say I want more features, but this is worth what I spent on it. I also spent full price. And I did not get this sent to me for a review. I did not get this sent to me for beta testing. This was not gifted to me. I saved up and I bought this. So I paid full price for it. Granted, it was when it was $3.49, but also I had to pay import fees and everything, so I've paid roughly what it's going for now. I'm happy. Alright guys, so that's been the review of the M3D Micro 3D printer. If you liked it, click that thumbs up. If you disliked it, click the thumbs down. Leave a comment, all that YouTube stuff. Have a good one, guys.